Okay, this is now the 9th of May 2019, and today's video is called, I think, Context is Everything. And this is because the question and what it's about is important in determining what the meaning is of what the card shows. So rather than having, it's easy to think that the tarot is like a dictionary. So if there's a word that you don't know, you look up the meaning in a dictionary and then it tells you what it means. But I was going to get into etymology, but I won't. But the tarot is not like a dictionary, because it's a bit like, maybe it's like one of those write your own adventure children's books, where depending on what decision you make at the end of a chapter, you go to a different chapter. So it's kind of fluid, the tarot is. That's for something else. Let me get back to today's video, which is called Context is Everything. So Maria in England does acupuncture, and she writes songs and she sings and she writes her own music. So it was kind of natural that she would decide that she wanted to become a music therapist and study music therapy. And there's a book that came out years ago called The Mozart Effect by a fellow called Campbell. I think it was Don Campbell. And he talks about how the work that he did and various studies have shown that if you're feeling under the weather or unwell, listen to Mozart and you get better. That's an oversimplification, but there's something about music and the vibration of sounds that can have a healing effect on the human system. And maybe it's because it calms the mind. And if your mind is calm and peaceful, then your physical being has got a better chance of repairing, or it's able to do what it does, and you're not interfering with its not natural, normal functioning. There's a fellow, Dr. John Bergman, that I'll tell you about later, not today, but some other day, who says that he's a chiropractor in Huntington Beach in California, and he says that the human body is self-healing, as we know, because if you cut yourself, it heals. You don't have to do anything. So the body is self-healing, but it's also self-regulating. All right, so it does what it has to do to keep going, even though medical testing may figure there's something wrong with you, when all it is the body regulating itself so that it can keep you going. But anyway, so Maria wants to do music therapy, and so she had to choose between, there were various side courses that she had to take, and one of them she had to choose between studying gongs or studying crystals to do with music therapy, and she wasn't sure which one to choose of the last elective that she had to pick. And so we were having this sort of email discussion, and I said, why don't you pick a card for each of them and see what you get and tell me what you make of it, and we can have a discussion. So she picked for gongs, like Tibetan gongs and other gongs, I don't really know. So for gongs, she got the Two of Cups, and for crystals, she got the Ace of Pentacles. So the Two of Cups shows this couple exchanging gifts. So if we take the idea of relationships, with the Two of Cups coming up to do with gongs, I think it's telling Maria that she would have a good relationship with gongs, because the card shows people who get along with each other, they're friendly, they're loving, they're kind, they're considerate. So it could be that Maria's relationship with gongs would be loving and kind and considerate and helpful. And it may be that through gongs or using gongs, she would be able to balance people or rebalance them or bring harmony within them or within their relationships, which is a kind of loose take on the Two of Cups, right? Because of what the picture shows. Whereas with crystals, we get the the Ace of Pentacles. So with crystals, you're in a garden, or with the Ace of Pentacles, you're in a garden, and it's a little bit unkempt, but that's okay. But there's an opening in the hedge. So with the Ace of Pentacles, you are being invited to walk through into a new land or into a new area. So with crystals, with Maria, she would be, whereas with the Two of Cups, you're already comfortable and you know something about what you're dealing with, right? Because it's a relationship and you've got some experience of it. And maybe Maria has actually heard gongs played on music over the years that she's been involved in. There's a beginning of Mother, I think it is, by John Lennon on his solo album, the first one, where you've got Tibetan gongs playing, and then he begins to sing, Mother, you had me, but I never had you. This is when John was going through his Arthur Yanov primal scream phase or experiences. So the difference between gongs and crystals for Maria is that she's already somewhat comfortable with gongs and the idea of gongs, but with crystals, there would be new learning. It's a new beginning. It would be a new path that she would have to travel. But then she wasn't sure. Well, she picked another couple of cards, one for each of them, just to see what else she got. And for gongs, she got the Eight of Batons, which is the arrows flying through the air and reaching their goal. And it's a kind of a good card. So in its own way, it's saying, yes, gongs is a good idea. Choose gongs. That's the right elective. And it's as if she develops a relationship, again, that keyword relationship from the Two of Cups, if she develops a relationship with gongs or invites gongs to participate with her, then there would be a good outcome because the batons were flying through the air. There's ease, and they're going to reach their goal. So that if she had decided she wanted to make extensive use of gongs with music therapy, it would work. It would work. I'm saying that generally because it's a comment card. Whereas the second card that she got for crystals was the Ace of Swords. So there are two things I'd like to say about that. One is, and this is why I'm saying context is everything, because the sword with going through the crown at the top is a bit like the spine, because Maria does acupuncture, right, which is physical therapy. You've got the sword, upright sword, and the crown can represent the head. So you've got the upright sword, which is a bit like the spine. And the spine, the bones of the spine protect the nervous system. And I remember from some of the Jordan Bergman videos that I watched, I don't want to get into this too much at the moment, but he talks about how the heart, after 28 days after conception, the heart begins to develop, right? The heart, 28 days. After 7 hours, the nervous system develops or begins to develop. So the nervous system is so important, and that's maybe why it's encased in bone in the spine. And the nervous system really controls all the organs in the body. So maybe crystals act directly on the nervous system, whereas gongs work on the emotions, because it's cups for water, for emotion. And again, Bergman talks about how if you look at the environment or the situation that you're in and you perceive that it's dangerous, or you see that it's dangerous, that causes the sympathetic nervous system to produce cortisol, which is the fight or flight hormone or whatever it is that gets you agitated and ready and causes your digestive system to shut down a bit, because if you're watching out for dangerous animals, you don't need to be digesting stuff. Whereas if you look at the environment and perceive that it's peaceful, then the parasympathetic nervous system can begin to operate, and that's rest and recuperation. So emotions are chemical reactions based on our perception of how we see the situation or how we see the world. And that's what we can say Maria would be dealing with if she were to pursue gongs, or what you get out of gongs in music therapy. Whereas with crystals, maybe you're dealing directly on the nervous system, because it's the spine. And this is why I'm saying this video is called Context is Everything, because you wouldn't normally look at the Ace of Swords upright and think of the spine. But because it's about therapy and physical well-being and the whole body and the system and the mind and body connection and the nervous system and Maria and acupuncture, somehow it's relevant and legitimate to talk about the Ace of Swords being the spine. Whereas I'm sure nobody watching it has ever had any need to talk about the spine with the Ace of Swords. And that's why context is everything, or the question really, and what it represents and what it's about is what determines what the card means. So we're not looking at you wouldn't find this in a dictionary, a tarot dictionary. You know, the Ace of Swords talk about the spine, but if we're relaxed and let our, I don't want to say imagination because that can be fantasy, but if we let our creative thought give us ideas and trust the ideas and go with them, then I think we come up with some interesting connections thanks to the tarot, or maybe thanks to some part of our mind that we're not normally connected with, or we're always in connection with it, but maybe we're not conscious of. Okay, that's me for the time being. I'll be back in 2 or 3 days. I don't know what to talk about next. If I knew what to talk about, I would say I'll be back in 2 days, but I need to come up with something, unless you want to send me an email and tell me what to talk about. Thank you very much. I'll see you again. Okay, bye-bye.